প্রফেসর সুনন্দ দত্তরা
আসতে চাইছেন না সামনে।
আচ্ছা, উনি এসছেন?
এসে পেছনে বসেছেন।
আচ্ছা,
কিন্তু পরের একদিন বসে ভালো করে
ঠিক
শুনে
আছে।
আমাকে
ঠিক আছে, ঠিক আছে, ঠিক
জানতে
আছে।
দিচ্ছে।
তিনি স্টার্ট করে আচ্ছা। Hello. Could you tell me which way I should go? Asked Alice to the Cheshire Cat. Well, that depends a good deal on where you want to go, replied the cat. I don't much care where, said Alice. Oh, then it doesn't matter which road you take, the cat replied. As long as I get somewhere, went on Alice resignedly. Oh, you're sure to do that, if only you could go long enough, warned the Cheshire Cat. I think by now you've all pretty much guessed how things are about to pan out this evening. A very warm welcome to you, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, on this delightful autumn evening. And thank you so much for investing your time to be with us this Saturday. You see, the idea of studying overseas has really caught on. It's become very popular now. But there aren't many people who are daring enough to give it a try. There may be some who thinks that they are not as bright, as street smart, and therefore would sell themselves short, while there are others who think that they know all there is to know in this world, and therefore there's no need to get uncomfortable, and that home is a better option. I think there are 2 points for and against this experience. And the reason that might stop you is that it is a terrifying change, and most of us are afraid of change. But I believe there is still one good reason why you should do this. While for some, this change, the thought of change, is defining and final. For some, it could be a game changer. I'm not talking about coming out of your comfort zone. I mean, who knows? It might lead you into your comfort zone at the end of the day. What I'm saying is, I'm talking about seeing this world from a different perspective, learning who you are, what you want from life, what you do not want from life, being determined about making certain informed choices and succeeding in making them. And believe me, it does not matter whether this experience shows you in a good light or in a bad light to the world around you. Because at the end of the day, your picture about yourself is going to get bigger and bigger, and your awareness will be on the rise. Our goal today, friends, is to ensure that you go away today with something worthwhile, however little that something might be. It could be a fresh idea, a new perspective, a fresh strategy that you can apply to be more successful in your career goals. And in order to do that, we simply cannot have you ambling away aimlessly without the slightest idea as to what you're going to do or where you're going to land up. And you see, because today we have around, say, 4,500 odd career options around the world, we are really spoiled for choices. That's the good thing. I mean, we as children didn't have so many options in our days. But the flip side of it is that you also get mightily confused. In order to shed light on how to go on about making informed choices so that they don't leave a big dent in your parents' pockets and it doesn't show off as expenditure, rather as investments which promise good returns. We have with us today a bright young scholar who's come all the way from Massachusetts, US, to give you some idea, to clear some of your doubts, talk about the cultural differences, difficult language, language barriers, accent barriers, different mentality, and of course, different education system, and most importantly, why you should venture to fresher and greener pastures. So what I'm going to do today is I would go on to a speaker. I would invite her to first come and address you. Now, normally when I invite a speaker on stage, I do my own bit of introduction because this is to avoid sort of, it sounding scripted. But with this speaker, I have decided to make an exception today precisely because I could not have penned a dossier so succinctly as she herself has. She is a full-time mom who is the mother of a college-going son and a daughter who's in class 11. She has experienced pre-college apprehensions, and of course, she is currently in the midst of it again. And when she is not clucking over her young adults, what she does is she clucks over, all right, over 6,000 odd students, of whom she is the mother, because she runs 4 schools, 2 ISC, ICSC, and 2 CBSE schools. And as part of her work portfolio, she personally supervises the Future Ready program for the senior students and guides them about life skills and helps them to select streams in colleges. She herself has studied school leadership at the Harvard University and has done her MBA at XLRI Jamshedpur, While closer to home, she is an alumnus of St. Xavier's College, La Martiniere, and Loreto House. She's an avid golfer, a badminton player, a theater enthusiast who firmly subscribes to Mark Twain's maxim of not letting schooling interfere with education. Mrs. Janet Gasper Chaudhary is here to address you. Janet, it's your turn to come up to the podium and awe the audience.
Thank you so much, Aparna, and good evening to all of you, especially to the students here who are prospective overseas college goers. When Aparna, talked about this idea of having speakers for students, I thought it was a great one. And I got on board immediately, had a quick chat, and then later she comes and tells me, could you do the introduction? And I thought that I have seen it from a student's perspective, and then as a mother, and as an educator. And therefore, I gladly agreed to do this little bit for the parents and the students who are here. So 25 years ago, when I got into business school, I had no idea what I was getting into. And having studied lived in a very protected environment, going to missionary schools, and growing up in these wonderful colonial clubs, it was very daunting for me to get to another city, completely different college, different environment, have friends who I'd never known before, live in a hostel, completely new life. I did not know what was going to happen. 25 years later, when I was doing the same recce with my son, who was applying abroad, I realized that not much had changed. Even though there was a myriad of information, an information overdose on the internet, there were some things that students still didn't know. But I was pleasantly surprised and impressed to find that the college that he had applied to, and I'm sure many other colleges do that as well, they identified Indian students on campus and assigned them certain freshmen and asked them to engage with them overseas, either through email or through personal calls, and try to make them comfortable before they flew the nest. And that was such a great idea. Today, as an educator, and talking to my students of class 9 to 12, I run a Future Ready program where I invite professionals from different spheres, as well as universities, to come and talk to students about career and college and how to choose streams. But interestingly, the session that has the greatest impact on the mind of these students are the ones where they talk to the alumni. And it's the peer-to-peer communication that really helps them the most. Going back to my own experience, I was personally blessed because I had a friend who had studied in the same college. And I could ask her these questions, and the questions were as silly and inane as, how will I get my clothes washed? Is there a laundry or is there a dhobi system? Where do I buy a new mattress if I want to? What kind of clothes should I wear? What if I get hungry at night? What do I eat? These things are not available on the internet. And therefore, this idea that Aparna and her team have come up with is a great opportunity for parents and students, where she's bringing experiences of individuals like Tathagato sitting here right into the living room. So enjoy the session, ask the silliest and simplest of questions, because those are the ones that will really make or break your experience abroad. Thank you so much and have a very good evening. Over to you, Aparna.
That was brilliant as usual. Thank you, Janet. I now invite Professor Amita Chatterjee. She is a member of our library subcommittee. I would invite her to introduce today's speaker, the star of the show, Mr. Tathagato Datto, and also to felicitate him. Didi.
Good evening, everybody. It's with great pleasure and excitement that I was looking forward to this event because I'm also associated with higher education and research, and I have to advise my students sometimes, and or you can say most of the time, and I find, as Professor Chaudhary has said, that it's always the peer-to-peer interaction that enlightens them most. So I'm going to introduce you Tathagata Datta. Tathagata had the good fortune of studying in both sides of the Atlantic after graduating from St. Stephen's College, Delhi. And then he did his MPhil from the University of Cambridge. And at present, he is a PhD candidate at Tufts University. And Tufts, you know, it's a difficult place to enter. And it's one of the very high-ranking institutes and very famous for its excellent schools of research. And now, as they have pointed out, that this idea of studying abroad has caught on, but at the same time, that competition has also increased very much. And that is why, you know, we find that there are, on top of that, there are also budget cuts in higher education. And that's why, you know, scholarships have become much scarce. But in spite of that, I find that Tathagata has been awarded with very good scholarships, distinguished scholarships. That's Tokyo Mitsubishi UFJ Scholarship at St. Stephen's College, then TGP Spear Scholarship at St. Stephen's College, Provost Fellow Award, Tufts University, consecutively for 2 years, then Tisch Library Graduate Student Research Fellowships, Taruknath Das Foundation Fellowship, Columbia University, and Fung EM Humanities Summer Fellowship, Tufts University. He has, to his credit, published articles in national and international journals and has a teaching experience at Tufts and also at the Ashoka University. Has presented papers in international seminars and conferences like Annual Conference on South Asia at Wisconsin-Madison, Annual Conference of Association of Asian Studies, Denver, British Association of South Asian Studies, Edinburgh. And I know that he will be able to tell you all the steps that you will have to take if you are to study abroad with scholarship. And that is something which or any aspiring student require if he or she wants to join an overseas institution. As has been pointed out, that there are information galore, but at the same time, there are chances of confusion, and therefore, Tathagata will guide us and will tell us that how to cope the different academic atmosphere, completely different environment, and pursue higher researches in spite of all odds, and you know also to try and get, say, scholarships successively to sustain oneself in higher education and research abroad. So I welcome Tathagata on the dais, and before he takes over, we would like to felicitate him with a bouquet of flowers. So over to you, Tathagata.
I will need the PPT. I'll need the PPT. Slideshow. A very good evening to one and all present here, as well as those joining us virtually. Let me take this opportunity to thank Dr. Aparna Khastagir, Dr. Gautam Khastagir of the Birth Inspire Foundation and the Bengal Club for extending their kind invitation. I'm also most grateful to Dr. Amita Chatterjee for her kind words of introduction. Though I'm afraid my credentials are far less than what has been presented in a most flattering fashion. Nonetheless, I shall strive my best to fulfill the mandate that I have been tasked with. I thought it would be appropriate to entitle my talk today as Notes of a Chronicler, History at the Margins. Notes are the lifelines of most practitioners of social sciences. These can be in the form of field notes, epigraphical, archaeobotanical, participant observation notes, and of course, archival notes. However, tonight, I'm here to share a very different kind of notes, notes which reveal the secrets of a career in the liberal arts. History is the discipline that I practice, but this evening, it is also the discipline that stands as a proxy for all the liberal arts, subjects which are relegated to the margins when it comes to career choices. It also so happens that I specialize literally on the margins of history. That is, I work on frontier histories. As I see it, my work here is twofold. First, the more difficult and abstract task of championing the cause of liberal arts as a viable career option, and then the more mundane of explaining the technicalities of what that entails. Let me start at the higher octave. What is history? Who determines what becomes history? And whose history should we be concerned about? Is the fact that India became independent on 15th August 1947 history? Or the fact that this very Bengal Club where we have gathered had once denied entry to Mahatma Gandhi history? Are the unknown Masons who laid the foundation of this august institution part of history? Many have attempted to answer these questions, and perhaps no one more famously than the British historian E.H. Carr in his 1961 lecture series at the University of Cambridge, which was later published as a book, What is History? However, I will not take us there tonight. At its most simplest understanding, the word history comes from the Greek historia, meaning inquiry or knowledge acquired by investigation. A good historian is therefore a good detective. Like most inquiries, most histories are self-reflective. Most of the historical debates that animate the public and grabs the headlines, be it on matters of the Constitution as envisioned by our founding fathers, the nature of the Indian Republic, or the freedom movement, are projections of who we are as a people and society. My journey into history too began as a self-introspection. My family's history as partition survivors and tales of my maternal grandmother's extended family as expatriates in colonial Malaya fascinated me. Here is an image of Tagore visiting the family in Penang in 1927. I would go on to write my MPhil thesis at Cambridge, partly using these very oral history interviews and family archives. How the personal history of my family got entwined with the Second World War and Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose's efforts of raising a liberation army in Southeast Asia. On 7th May 1959, a few minutes past 5 in the afternoon, at the Senate House at Cambridge, Sir Charles Snow had given his historic speech on two cultures and the scientific revolution. The two cultures he identified were those of the literary intellectuals and those of natural scientists, between whom Sir Snow claimed to find profound mutual suspicion and incomprehension, which in turn had damaging consequences for the prospects of applying technology to the alleviation of the world's problems. Unfortunately, the gulf continues to persist. A contemporary example of this gulf can be seen in the context of vaccine hesitancy. While the scientific community delivered a range of vaccines for combating the pandemic, for them it remains a matter of mystery why so many people around the world refuse to take these very life-saving vaccines. Here, the social scientists, if roped in by the policymakers, can perhaps show a way forward. Thus, all global problems cannot and shall not have technological solutions. Social scientists trained in the liberal arts, therefore, have unique transferable skills of comprehension, analysis, and interpretation of the human world, which unfortunately largely remains untapped in this country and less so perhaps even in the West. Having championed the cause of liberal arts for the last several minutes, let me now turn to the more mundane. What does the practice of history really look like? Are we the Indiana Jones? Not quite. A great deal of our time is spent in buildings such as these. The National Archive at Kew Gardens, the British Library at London, or even in the remote capital of Burma, the National Archives Department. And what is it that we do here? Well, most practitioners of history study some sort of archival document, such as these. And it is through these study of disparate information that we weave a narrative. I think everyone is now eager to know, what do universities in the West, be it Cambridge or Tufts, want in their application? So let us start with the basics. Most universities in the United Kingdom would want some sort of a language test. So one of the tests that can be taken is IELTS. This is a test which is mostly taken for those who want to study in the UK or Europe. Whereas the United States or Canada, universities in these countries prefer the TOEFL. We can talk about these in the discussion session. But most importantly, I think that most universities in the United States require the Graduate Record Examination, or the GRE. These examinations are needed for any sort of postgraduate application, be it masters or PhDs. Then, of course, there are other basics, which is how to make a resume, what constitutes a good resume, and letters of recommendation. Well, we can talk about these, but I want to turn focus to something much more central. The centerpiece of a good application is the research proposal or the statement of purpose. It is this very document which determines whether one is accepted or rejected in any good university in the world. And what makes a good research proposal? A good research proposal is one that asks a good research question that has serious implications for human society and life. And it is the judgment whether or not a candidate has the promise to fulfill those research questions. That is your story. What is the story that you sell to these universities, which will determine whether or not you are accepted. Now, of course, there is the other issue of what are the career prospects once you have joined a world-class university. There's a misconception that the only career option available after an education in the liberal arts is that of teaching and research. Of course, that is there. But one has a variety of options. My alma mater, St. Stephen's College, singularly produces most of the public servants of this country, including S. Jayashankar, our former Foreign Secretary and present External Affairs Minister, Shaktikant Das, who actually has a degree in history, but is the governor of the Reserve Bank of India, Shashi Tharoor, who happens to be both an alumnus of St. Stephen's and Tufts, had a distinguished career as the Under-Secretary in the United Nations before becoming a parliamentarian. One can also have a career in publishing and journalism, and the best examples are perhaps Chandan, the late Chandan Mitra, Sapan Das Gupta, Barkha Dutt, Sagarika Ghosh, Paranjay Guhathakurata, all alumni of the liberal arts from St. Stephen's. And then, of course, some very fine historians and academics, perhaps most famously, Ramchandra Guha. But then there is, of course, the option of social service. And one can always work at places like Oxfam, Amnesty International, or become someone like Bankar Roy, who provides unique educational opportunities through his institution, Barefoot College. Some even ask, is it even possible to have a career in the corporate after education in the liberal arts? And the answer is yes, yes, and yes. So I'm going to talk about one small company. They run out of London. It's called Alaco. It's a London-based business intelligence firm. They provide clients with risk management analysis for investments in volatile countries of Africa and Asia. And it is the very kind of skill, the political knowledge of these countries that one gets if through a liberal arts education that is most sought after. As I wind up my talk, let me end with a series of light-hearted anecdotes and life lessons. For my college, I had stayed away from home for 3 years at Delhi. So when it came for me to attend Cambridge, my parents decided that I should travel alone internationally and face, in the words of Aldous Huxley, the brave new world. I was not quite traveling alone. A friend of mine from college, who was also attending Cambridge, was accompanying me. We were very pleased that the airline's Virgin Atlantic was giving us a special student offer of allowing 90 kilograms of luggage. Both of us had stuffed our 2 suitcases 30 kg each, and were confident we still had 30 kg in spare. To our shock, we were told 90 kg was allowed, but each baggage of only 23 kg was the permitted limit. We had to buy a new baggage from the airport unpack, repack. So lesson number 1, always read the fine print. One of my college professors at St. Stephen's, who himself had been to Cambridge, had told us that Cambridge colleges are very safe and manned 24/7 by college porters. Porters are basically the exalted term bestowed upon college gatekeepers at Cambridge. Armed with such sheer knowledge, we traveled without informing our college or carrying an international cell or internet plan. The idea was to settle down and gradually procure these connections. So after a delayed flight, when we finally landed in our college, that is my college, St. Edmunds, at about 2:30 in the night, we found no porters, no gatekeepers, not even a soul. Early October in Cambridge means temperatures had plunged to 1 degree centigrade. And given our inadequate clothing, we faced a real prospect of freezing under the starry night. It was sheer dumb luck. An Indian girl, that too from Calcutta, was returning to college from the library and was able to call the porters for us and proverbially save our lives. Later, I learned St. Edmunds is a mature college and therefore porters leave after midnight. So lesson number 2, no two situations are alike. As I gradually settled down, I had to go up to Magdalen College for my supervisions. All I knew, my supervisor's office was on top of Pepys Library. However, in my utter ignorance of the existence of Mr. Samuel Pepys, the famous English diarist, I blasphemously asked the porters at Magdalen, where would I find Pepe's library? I, a Cambridge scholar, had betrayed my third world roots and was promptly shown my place by the crisp English-speaking porters. But my entanglement with Mr. Samuel Pepys doesn't end there. I was duly informed by my supervisor that I would have to freeze every time I came for supervision because of fire hazard. His office above the historic Pepys Library had no heating. He was only allowed a personal portable heater. So lesson number 3, be prepared to be embarrassed and be prepared to face the cold. As my supervision progressed, my supervisor from time to time suggested perhaps it is a good idea to write down some of my thoughts. I thought, yes, it is a good idea, but it can remain an idea. Soon enough, my supervisor informed me that it was not a mere suggestion, but an order. So final lesson, the English don't mean what they say and say what they don't mean. I think I'll end here, and I'm sure there will be much more questions on scholarships, and I think that would be better served through a discussion and question answer session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tathagato, for a very enlightened talk. I'm sure the students today who've gathered here will go away with plenty of food for thought. Before we open the floor to question and answer, I would be very happy if we could have a few of the suggestions from the teachers who have been kind enough to grace this occasion. They are free to give their feedback in any language, their preferred language that they wish to. The idea is to have some valuable feedback as to the desirability or usefulness of such events so that we can learn. It can be a learning experience for us, and we can progress further and make more such events. would any of you be kind enough to give your opinion before we go off to the question answer session?
Yes.
Well, my question is, may I just introduce myself? I'm a teacher in a Bengali medium school in Kolkata. So there are students who are going through TOEFL and GRE. Now, so let me ask a question which starts before the beginning of this. That is there any training for students regarding this language skill in Kolkata? Before we get into
Actually, sir, there are many places. We don't want to talk about anything particular, but if you would like to speak with me, I can give you some suggestions. There will be institutions and teachers available for any kind of training in Kolkata.
Any other question? আর কেউ কিছু জিজ্ঞেস করতে চান? কি মনে হচ্ছে আজকের এই প্রোগ্রামটা নিয়ে সত্যি কি এর কোনো দরকার আছে? আপনারা কি মনে করেন? Your preferred language, it can be Hindi, English, Bengali, whatever.
আমি একটু বাংলাতেই বলছি।
হ্যাঁ বলুন।
অ্যাকচুয়ালি আমরা যে চেষ্টাগুলো করছি সেই চেষ্টাগুলি দুটি দিক আছে, একটা সোশ্যাল অ্যাওয়ারনেসের দিক, সোশ্যাল অ্যাটিটিউডগুলি আছে। অ্যাট দ্য সেম টাইম আমাদের যে অ্যাডমিনিস্ট্রেটিভ লেভেলে যেখানে সিলেবাস থেকে শুরু করে সবকিছু তৈরি হয় সেই দিকটাও কিন্তু আমাদের একটা গুরুত্বপূর্ণ দিক, কেননা সেই নির্দেশ ছাড়া প্রতিষ্ঠানগুলো চলতে পারে না। সুতরাং একটা লিঙ্ক থাকার খুব দরকার। আমরা বিশ্বাস করি প্ল্যানিং ইজ দ্য ডিজাইন ফর দ্য ডিজায়ার্ড ফিউচার। সেই প্ল্যানিংটা কি করে হওয়া উচিত? অ্যাকচুয়ালি আমরা সাবজেক্টগুলোকে বুঝি যে সাবজেক্টগুলো বোধহয় সাবজেক্টের মধ্যেই সীমাবদ্ধ, কিন্তু আমার ব্যক্তিগত অভিমত হচ্ছে সাবজেক্টস আর নাথিং বাট দ্য ডিফারেন্ট কাইন্ডস অফ এক্সারসাইজ অফ ডিফারেন্ট কাইন্ডস অফ ব্রেন সেলস টু ডেভেলপ দ্য ডিফারেন্ট কাইন্ডস অফ মেন্টাল এবিলিটি। এবং 6 থেকে 7টি মেন্টাল এবিলিটি বা পার্সোনালিটি ডেভেলপমেন্ট দ্বারা সারা পৃথিবীর কাজ যোগ্যতার সঙ্গে করা যায়, যে কথা তথাগতবাবু বলছিলেন যে হিস্ট্রি থেকেও কিন্তু রিজার্ভ ব্যাংকের গভর্নরের জায়গায় যাওয়া যায়। অর্থাৎ সাবজেক্ট এখানে বড় কথা নয়, পার্সোনালিটি ডেভেলপমেন্ট এবং নিড সলিউশন, এই যে নিড বেস সলিউশনের যে ধারাগুলি সেগুলি নিয়ে একটি সিলেবাস ফ্রেমওয়ার্ক, যেহেতু এখন পারিবারিক শিক্ষা নয়, সোশ্যাল নয়, ন্যাশনাল নয়, গ্লোবাল, সেই জন্য এই গ্লোবাল অ্যাটিটিউডকে লক্ষ্য রেখে একটি কারিকুলাম তৈরির যে প্রচেষ্টা সেটাও সর্বস্তরে করবার একটা আবেদন জানানো হোক, এটা আমার অনুরোধ।
ভীষণ ভালো, ভীষণ ভালো। আমাদের মনে হয় ভীষণ ভালো এটা একটা সাজেশন, আমাদের সবার সেটা কিন্তু সাদরে গ্রহণ করা উচিত। আরেকটা কথা আমি এখানে বলবো, এই যে স্কুল কলেজের সিলেবাসের সাথে আমি হয়তো একটু অন্যভাবে জিনিসটাকে প্লেস করতে চাই। আমরা বিভিন্ন কম্পিটিটিভ পরীক্ষা এখনকার দিনে ছেলেমেয়েরা বসে, হ্যাঁ, অনেক বাবা মার কিন্তু একটা ধারণা, যারা আমরা অন্তত পড়াবার সময় দেখি ছেলে মেয়েদের ক্ষেত্রে বাবা মারা প্রায়ই বলেন যে ছেলেমেয়েরা এখন স্কুল কলেজের পড়াশোনা নিয়ে খুব ব্যস্ত, কাজেই এই কম্পিটিটিভ পরীক্ষার জন্য আলাদা করে প্রিপারেশন নেওয়ার তাদের কোনো সময় নেই। কিন্তু আমার যেটা মনে হয়, দেখুন, যে কোনো কম্পিটিটিভ পরীক্ষা অল অ্যারাউন্ড দ্য ওয়ার্ল্ডে কিছু সাবজেক্টস কিন্তু কমন থাকে, যেরকম জিকে, জেনারেল নলেজ, কারেন্ট অ্যাফেয়ার্স, ইংলিশ, ম্যাথস, লজিক্যাল রিজনিং, এগুলো কিন্তু সব প্রত্যেকটা পরীক্ষায় কিন্তু কমন থাকে। কাজে এই জিনিসগুলো যদি আমরা খুব আগে থাকতে ক্লাস 5-6 থেকে যদি আরম্ভ করতে পারি, তাতে কি হয়, তাতে আলাদা করে এই জিনিসগুলোর প্রিপারেশন নিতে হয় না। আমার মনে হয় চাপটা কিন্তু ছেলে মেয়েদের ক্ষেত্রে অনেকটা কমে যায়। আমি জানি না অন্যদের কি মতামত, এটা আমার নিজস্ব মতামত। ম্যাম, হ্যাঁ, আপনি কিছু বলুন।
হ্যাঁ, আমি একটা জিনিস একটু জিজ্ঞাসা করব। এই বছরেই আমাদের মানে এই লকডাউনের পর যেটা হয়েছে, সত্যি মানে স্কলারশিপগুলো দ্য সোর্সেস হ্যাভ ড্রাইড আপ লিটারেলি। তো আমার নিজেরই ডিপার্টমেন্টের দুটি মেয়ে, ইভেন আফটার সিকিউরিং চান্স ইন প্যারিস স্কুল অফ ইকোনমিক্স অ্যান্ড ইউনিভার্সিটি অফ এডিনবারা, they could not make it because they didn't get any scholarship. সো আমি যেটা জিজ্ঞেস করতে, স্কলারশিপের তো অনেক সোর্স আছে, ওরা তো খোঁজে, মানে ওরা আমাদের থেকে বেশি ইনফর্ম। বাট হোয়াট হ্যাপেন্স ইফ সামওয়ান ডাজ নট গেট এ স্কলারশিপ বাট গেট এ চান্স? তো তার কি কোনো আছে, মানে ওখানে গিয়ে নিজে অন্য পার্ট টাইমে কিছু জব করে ওখানে কি মানে সার্ভাইভ করা যায়, মানে এই ধরনের যদি কিছু আমাদের ইনফরমেশন থাকে, এটা হচ্ছে 1 নম্বর। আর একটা কথা হচ্ছে যে দেয়ার আর প্লেন্টি অফ গুড ইউনিভার্সিটিস, কিন্তু আমি যে সাবজেক্ট পড়ছি তার জন্য কোনটা বেটার, সেইটা যদি আপনারা মানে যখন আপনারা মানে এটা একটু করছেনই, যদি এই ধরনের কাউন্সিলিং ওরা পায় মানে একদম সাবজেক্ট বেসড, সেইটাতে বোধহয় ওদের অনেক সুবিধা হবে। কারণ ইন্টারনেটে তো আর এটা জানা থাকে না যে কোন ইউনিভার্সিটিতে কোন ডিপার্টমেন্টটা ভালো। এই দুটো সাজেশনস আমার। হ্যাঁ, অ্যান্ড এডুকেশন লোন যেটা আমাদের যেটা এখন সরকার থেকে যেটা আমাদের দিচ্ছে, সেটা তো এখন ওভারসিজের জন্য খোলেনি। সো ইফ দেয়ার ইজ এনি সোর্স অফ গেটিং অ্যান এডুকেশন লোন from here, from state governments or central governments, or some loan from abroad banks, সেই
Absolutely.
সোর্স গুলো ওদের জানা থাকলে ওদের কনফিডেন্সটা একটু বেশি হবে।
আমার মনে হয় তথাগত will be the best person to answer that question.
হ্যাঁ, আই থিঙ্ক ফার্স্ট কোয়েশ্চেনটা হচ্ছে অ্যাবাউট স্কলারশিপস সত্যি আফটার প্যান্ডেমিক ইজ ভেরি ডিফিকাল্ট, সত্যি ডিফিকাল্ট। কিন্তু অনেক ইউকে বেসড স্কলারশিপস অনেক আছে, যেগুলো ক্লাসিক যেগুলো আছে সেগুলো হচ্ছে রোডস ফাউন্ডেশন অক্সফোর্ডের জন্য, ইনল্যাক্স, তারপরে আছে হচ্ছে কমনওয়েলথ আর ফিলিক্স। এইগুলো হচ্ছে খুব স্ট্যান্ডার্ড ওয়েল নোন robust scholarships. তাছাড়াও there are other opportunities, এবার সেগুলো হচ্ছে loan based kind of scholarship. So there is a foundation called Narottam Foundation. They give an interest free credit, সেটা অ্যাপ্লাই করা যেতে পারে। Plus Tata for women applicants, they also have a special fund which can also it's a loan based but interest free kind of a US এর জন্য it is quite different. US এর জন্য some colleges or universities in the US are very rich, so they give you a scholarship for undergrad, but undergrad scholarships generally come. But all PhD programs in the United States are fully funded. So anybody wanting to go for a PhD, I would definitely recommend go to the US over England or Europe. For MBAs, now for MBAs, of course, there is no scholarship. MBA there is no scholarship at all. সেটার জন্য যেটা হতে পারে যে ইন্ডিয়া থেকে লোন নেওয়া যেতে পারে, but interest rates are very high. So what happens is that most good business schools, Harvard or Dartmouth, these schools give loans. So it's like studying on credit on a very low interest rate, 4% or 3%, because inflation rates are very low in the United States. So I think those are good options how to navigate. Arekta ki question chilo?
Whether we can have more of these discussions on other
Subjects, okay. Now এবার এখানে একটা question আছে, what is it that you're going to study? Are you going to study for undergrad or are you going to go for masters or PhD? Now PhD te I think the most important thing that one should look is your supervisor. Whether or not your supervisor is well established in that field, I think that is more important than even the selection of the university. And of course, there are global rankings, QS rankings, and all of that is there. But Tao, I think it depends on the professors and the supervisors that you work. Even for undergrad, you have thesis advisors in the US. So these are more important factors than just looking at brand value of universities.
The other thing I want to say is there are a few Hindi speaking audience at the back. So in short, would you like what he said to be translated in Hindi? It's English or Hindi? Right, because you don't understand Bengali. So if he can please from time to time,
Sure.
majorly stick to these two,
Yeah.
that will be better. Is there anything that you missed
Missed, yeah.
out? And he would be more than happy to repeat that.
The loan part.
Which part? The loan part. If you can go over the
Okay,
loan
the
part.
loan part, there are several foundations. These are corporate houses. So one of them is Narottam Foundation, from where you can get an interest-free loan. And as a woman applicant, Tata also has a fund exclusively for interest-free loan kind of funding for women applicants for graduate studies. For business schools, you can take a loan from Indian banks, but interest rates are very, very high. So it is recommended that you take loans from the business schools themselves. So business schools, they fund you on credit, and their interest rates are quite low, 3% or 4%. And most business schools, of course, don't give you a scholarship. But what business schools and many universities in the US does offer is a tuition remission. So you can get a tuition remission of 30%, 40%. That possibility is also there. The Narottam Foundation and the Tata Foundation, they're mostly for postgraduate
Okay.
programs.
Okay.
For undergrads, funding is generally very, very low. But some US universities do give. For instance, Tufts has a very good funding for undergrad education. It's one of those few universities which actually fully fund 1 or 2 Indian students every year.
And that, what is the appropriate time for application?
Okay, so most applications in the US and in the UK starts between end of August and early January. So most of the application cycle is end August and early January. Yeah, sure.
Many of our friends, thank you. Many of our friends from outside West Bengal, like from Maharashtra, Delhi, and South India, what they have done, this is, I'm talking about medicine. They have taken a loan, reached the country, started the course, and they have found opportunity of getting scholarship there only was much higher than applying from here. So I just wanted to tell the audience that many a time we people from eastern part of India, we are very hesitant to take the risk. So my friends from Mumbai, what they have done, say 20 years back, they used to take a big bank loan, visited UK and US, got the training, came back, started working on that experience and paid back their loan. Now, this may be valid for medicine or maybe technology, may not be valid for literature or other discipline. But my personal opinion, I would like to know what's the circumstances now of getting a loan, getting a scholarship for the second year and third year, rather than getting a full scholarship for the whole period. And the second query is, what are the options of earning there by doing other jobs, which we all have done while we were there?
Okay, there's a very simple answer to that. Yes, there are opportunities to get a funding in the second or third year. It's more so in the US. So I always say go to the US. Great Britain has become Little England, so their funding has also dwindled. So go to the US. There is definitely good opportunity to get that kind of funding from the second or third year. But what I will also say is that most universities, if you're going on an F1 visa to the US, they allow you to work for 20 hours a week. So you can earn quite a bit. You can at least earn your bread and butter, if not your housing cost. I think even the UK, if you're going on an Tier 4 visa, you can earn for 20 hours a week. So these are good opportunities. So these are good opportunities, and sometimes these work opportunities come within the university. So if you're in the sciences, you can get a job as a lab assistant. If you're in the humanities, you can get a job as managing the library, cataloging the library, or a research assistant to a professor. And then there's, of course, the biggest opportunity which the United States provides is your teaching assistantships. So you can teach with the professor, and that actually pays very, very well. That can take care of not just your bread and butter, but much more.
I don't know about this situation now, but how many years was it in the year 90? In the 90s, when I went to do my research over there, what I found was we were allowed to invigilate even for university examinations, where we earned quite a good sum, and we could also support ourselves then. I mean, in our times, in my experience, what happened is I just landed up there. I had no idea about doing a research, a PhD or anything. I accompanied my husband after getting married. And then I went and applied to the universities. And then I applied for a bank loan because I didn't have the money to pay for it. And even at that stage, because I was going to be the first year student, no one was ready to offer me any scholarship, because they would bank on somebody who gave a reference from that country and not back in India. So I funded myself for a year, and then from the next year, I got scholarships. So I don't know whether this works out even today, but I'm talking about 30, 35 years back. That was a long time back. And if Payal Chitlangia, she's a career counselor, a very good friend of mine, and if she can throw light on these questions.
Well, I would say that if you are going to study somewhere, ensure that you have enough money to do it if it comes by a loan. Second and third year funding is extremely difficult. You may do super well in your first year and compete for something, but I don't think that you will even get a visa if you cannot show full funding at this point. Where undergraduate financial aid is concerned, actually a lot of US universities can give you need-based financial aid as well. And they will ensure that when they give you that money, they will look at your financial papers, they will ensure that you're asking for the right reasons. And if they give you the money, they will ensure that you get it for all 4 years. So when you go, make sure that you have your plans from before. Where loans are concerned, in the US, you can get a loan as a student if an American citizen co-signs the loan there. But beyond that, it's a little difficult for a foreign student to come in and get a loan. And what else would you guys like to know? And I'm happy to answer.
I think Shemonti, our librarian, Shemonti Shemukto, I think she's the one who's taking the online questions. Are there any questions?
Hello, good evening, everyone. We have just received only one comment. This is not really any question. This is just a comment that this event is a very fruitful one for the aspiring candidates for the young students. That's the only comment we have received so far online.
Okay, we can then open the floor to the students especially to ask questions, because we have so many people here who would be more than willing to answer your queries, your doubts. So make the most of it, please. Yes.
Hello and good evening. I'm Oishi Bhattacharya from Lamart, India. My question is, what all subjects are included in the liberal arts apart from history? And the second question is, what all jobs can we get if in the foreign countries?
So I didn't follow the first part of your question. What are the subjects that you can study? Is that the question?
Yes, the subjects included in the liberal arts.
In the liberal arts. So there's a range of subjects that you can study in both the UK and the US. Some of the most popular ones are literature, English, international studies, or international relations. That actually has a very good job prospect. Many of them land up in the UN or allied kind of organizations with the UN. So that kind of a career option is very much open, those who do the international studies. Then there are, a lot of corporate houses which actually seek these kind of qualifications because of risk management, business risk management that they have to take, in certain foreign ventures that they do. Plus, there's an option in publishing, journalism. So some of the best journalism schools like Columbia, that's a very good option if you want to go for journalism. So there's a whole range of choices, but I think most important is what is that interests you. If you do not have that quite clear in your head, there's always chance of muddling through. So I think that's something that you need to think about.
And if I may just add on, you see, when Tathagata was talking about IELTS examinations, people out there are really more clever than we kind of sometimes give them credit. Because I remember when I took my IELTS scores and showed it to them, they actually, I submitted to the college and they called me for an interview. And then at the end of the day, they told me, you see, we just wanted to get, we wanted to talk to you, get acclimatized to you, to see actually whether you can speak English or not. Because a lot of the students present their IELTS certificates, and we have found out during class that they are unable to understand properly because it's the accent. Remember the accent which we were talking about? There's the Geordie accent, Newfoundland accent, whatever accent, you just name it and you have here. Okay, so, and I'll tell you this, I'll take it for truth, because I used to pride myself on the fact that I was very good in English because I hailed from an English medium and ICSE background, whereas my husband came from a Bengali medium background. I was pleasantly surprised one day when I could not follow a lady who had come to his chamber, whereas he sat there talking very comfortably with him, with her. It's because the ear. Because he was seeing so many patients each day, and he got the hang of it much more quickly than I did. So, you may be in for surprises. Payal, what say you?
Just read books, guys. You don't even need any help for the IELTS or the TOEFL if you read from the very beginning. Switch off your phone and read a book, and it's going to really help. But more than that, I mean, since you did talk about the liberal arts, when you're looking at it at the undergraduate level in the US, it's actually a short form for liberal arts and the sciences. So at a liberal arts school, you could study physics along with your English. You could study, linguistics, and you could study math and literature and studio art and movie making and all of that. And it's totally up to you what you choose for the first 2 years. And while you're exploring them, you will discover what your ultimate interest is. And that is the base of liberal arts school in the US. They're not just liberal arts, they're liberal arts and science colleges. But because we get a little lazy, we say liberal arts colleges. Okay?
Thank you.
And while Payal is here, make the most of it. Ask all the, even the silliest of questions. I wish I could go back to my college days and have one such, whose brains I could pick. One of the questions I would like to ask on behalf of the students is, how best can you write your resume so that you get accepted?
You have to first build your profile to write your resume.
What do you mean by building a profile, please?
I think you have to explore different interests and not try to copy someone else, but go with what makes you happy. So if you like to sing, sing. If you like to do art, do that. If you want to study the sciences, delve more into that. Don't try to do a bit of everything, and don't try to be someone else. Try to be someone who explores, discovers what she or he is interested in, and then takes it to the next level. So if you have figured out what interests you, deepen that interest, do activities in that area, and your resume will begin to look amazing anyway.
Do they look for your English, how perfect your English is while you write your pen down your resume?
Absolutely, and get help if you need to. The grammar definitely needs to be correct, right?
Be mindful of that, girls and boys.
I'm sure they will do that.
Shebunti has a question. Yes.
We have received a question from somebody called Aishwarya Rai, and she.
Oh, interesting name.
Yes, a very. And the question is also equally interesting. Her question is, how can I convince my parents for studying abroad?
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
Wow.
Will Janet please take this question?
I'm actually thinking. But I think for students, and Aishwarya who asked the question, today there is just so much of information available to make up your mind and decide where you want to study. Today's students are a lot more clear in their head in terms of what they want to do than what we were when we were back in school. So I think in order to convince parents, if that's what you need to do, having your ideas, what you intend to do, how you would want to do it, what is your path forward, what your heart really desires, as in putting all this down and having a heart-to-heart conversation is really important. Having said that, I do know that in many cases, it's very difficult for parents, or rather for students or children to convince parents. It may be a good idea to go ahead with the undergraduate first in India. By that time, you've reached the age of 21, where you can take your own decisions. And as Tathagata just said, it's much easier to get funding for postgrad than undergrad, and that's when you can fly the nest.
One more question. One more question which we have received from Pragya Shil. What are the opportunities for commerce students abroad, and any scholarship or loan available?
Who would like to take this question?
It depends on whether it's undergrad or postgrad. If it's undergrad, if they identify the institutions, they can get financial aid. You can't, when someone is choosing an institution, you need to look at the history of that institution in providing financial aid. And some colleges have a tremendous amount of money to give. And the reason they give that money to students who are deserving is to create diversity on campus. They want to bring the most deserving candidates, even if the candidates cannot afford it. So when they need funding, it's important to check what kind of funding is available at the institution. These figures are fully publicly available. There is something called a common data set. And if you look at the common data set of any institution, you will know exactly how much money they've given in the last few years.
Okay. Wow.
The
Bingo,
next
you have it
question,
there. Yes.
the next question that comes up is from Anuksha Gopa. What is the scope of studying psychology abroad? And also, what are the good universities for post-graduation in psychology?
That's your question.
Okay. So I think psychology is a subject which is kind of specialized. So some of the good universities, I think, would be Johns Hopkins in the US, also Emory in Atlanta. So sometimes it's not just the Ivies which specialize in certain kind of subjects, but these are the two that comes to my mind. In the UK, of course, Edinburgh would be probably a good option if somebody wants to take there.
Next question is from Mr. Shomo Datto. He asks, apart from the US and UK universities and colleges, what are the options in studying Southeast Asian countries or in Australia?
Pile again.
There are plenty of options. So people do go to Singapore, to Hong Kong, if they're comfortable with the political situation in Hong Kong. The education is fantastic. Singapore, of course, we all know is safe, but extremely competitive to get into. Australia, New Zealand, they're all open. Last couple of years have been tough in Australia, but I hope that once this whole pandemic is over and they get their act in order, our students can begin going again.
Only you don't come back when you go there. That's what Payal told me.
Well, not for the last 2 years, but they will come back eventually.
We have a question from
Sir.
the audience. Yes?
Yes. So you mentioned earlier that for the PhD, you get the full funding in the US. So what are the like for history, they give the full funding. And what about the masters?
Okay, so in the US, masters did not exist. It's just a recent phenomenon that some universities are actually having these master's courses. So they don't fund you. Traditionally in the US, the system is that straight after undergrad, you go into a graduate studies program. So you finish your 2 years of coursework and you get an automatic master's or AM, as it's sometimes called. And then you have candidacy and then you finish your thesis and then you become a doctorate. So that's the traditional US system. So you're fully funded. In the US, most graduate studies programs are fully funded.
Shebunti,
We
you
have
any-
received another question from Oshmita Kundu. She writes, could you please enlighten us regarding the scopes of archaeology in foreign universities?
Actually, Tufts is a very good program on archaeology, and I actually know someone who got a full funded scholarship for studying archaeology at Tufts. But I think, any of the top universities, and this was actually for undergrad. So he had gotten funding for studying undergrad at Tufts because he had indicated he will do a major in archaeology. But any of the big universities, be it Harvard or Columbia or Cornell, all of these universities have a very good archaeology program.
And yes.
Mine is not a suggestion. This is it's basically a suggestion. What I'm going to say. I teach in St. Xavier's Collegiate School. The problem is in big schools like us also, there's no counselor as such who will be addressing these problems of the students, where to apply to, which course is better, which university they should go to. So if from your platform, from Inspire or somewhere, if all the schools can be approached at least during this August, September, before they apply for this foreign universities,
Sure.
some sort of light is given to them in the proper way, because most of them, some of them are very rich and they can afford this kind of high paid counseling, but many students can't.
Okay.
So for them, if at least once a week or something, proper counseling is given, maybe 1 hour.
Thank
In
you.
that only, if
Yes.
they come in, and they'll be able to open up their questions and get proper guidance from you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you very much for this suggestion. We will take it on, definitely. Any other question? Yes, yes, please.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Shruti Kishan from Martin for Girls. So, I intend to pursue law after completing class 12. So, when you apply for colleges and universities abroad, they usually take interviews. So, what are the questions that I should be prepared for, and how should I go about it if I intend to do my undergrad in the UK? Thank you.
Okay, so for law, I think there's very specific answer to your question. Because India follows the common law, so you can actually go to UK. It's preferable you go to UK if you want to practice in India. The US law system, law schools work completely differently. So as far as I know, I'm not a specialist in law, but as far as I know, traditionally UK did not have a law program. It was through the INS. So they would call you to one of the bars in London and you did an internship, and that's how it happened. But having said that, I know at least the University of Manchester has a law program, undergrad law program. And most universities, including Cambridge, they give LLMs, London School of Economics, all of these places have LLMs. So for law, I think specifically, I think you should try do the undergrad in India and then go for a postgrad in the UK for an LLM from Cambridge, Oxford, or London School of Economics.
Our next question is from.
Could I continue that? Actually, you can do an LLB in London. There are pre-approved institutions that you could work with, that you could get your LLB from and practice in India. You should actually prepare for the LNAT and not be looking at the interview process right now. There are some LNAT optional schools also. So if you don't want to take the LNAT, then you go to a little less competitive LLB school, but there are plenty of them actually to go to in the UK.
And I think all are good because they all have a certain standard. We have a common misconception in India that there are kind of grades, but believe me, in the West, when we are talking about the West, each and every school and college and university, they have a particular standard which they have to follow.
I have just one more question.
Yes, please.
Ma'am, sorry, someone from St. Xavier's asked a question. Yeah. I just want to let you know that there is an institute in Lucknow, which is called Institute of Career Studies. They have an app that can be downloaded. It's free of cost. And any student can look at that app and they can answer a few questions, which it's a kind of a psychometric test, but a very simple one, which at least lets the students understand what course they can pursue given their inherent talents. And then there is a whole host of services that are there which are available free of cost. It's on the app, on their phone they can do it. And then if you need any individual counseling, then they can reach out to individuals there, or there are various counselors, like Payal is one of them, who helps students. But this app is something that anyone can download and they can test it out. Yeah, the app is called ICS, Institute of Career Studies. So if you just check Institute of Career Studies on Google, you will get the link and you will get the app. Or even look at it on Google Play or Apple Store, you will find it.
Also, ma'am, if you need me to come and speak with your students one day, I can do it, but I can't do it once a week.
We have got quite a few more questions. Wow. This one is from Shantani Roy, who is asking which university will be best for studying masters in English literature with guaranteed job placement. And budget friendly as well.
Okay. University, you mean, is she specifying which country?
No, she hasn't specified any country.
Okay. No. I think everybody knows the answer to it.
This is too general a question.
I know,
to
I
answer.
know, I know. Tathagata, would you like to take it on?
Well, I think any of the top universities would do the trick, Oxford, Cambridge.
Yes, but those would sound a bit cliched. But then it's
You have to look at your own profile, what your grades are like,
Absolutely.
what you want to do, but I promise no one can guarantee you a job.
The next question is from Ankita Dotto. She has requested to suggest any website or institution which will notify her about all the details that are required to go abroad.
Oh wow, we are still looking at it. We are working on it. I promise you, me, Janet and Payal will work on it and have our own website soon. Any other? Yes.
Good university, sorry.
Please continue.
Take the mic, ma'am.
Thank you. Apart from USA and UK, I heard some other countries in Europe, like Germany, Netherlands, they also have a very good scholarship opportunities. So can you?
Yes,
Elaborate.
it's true. For PhDs, particularly for the sciences, for the natural sciences, I think the Germany is fantastic. University of Stuttgart, then Heidelberg, all of these are very good. But there is a problem, slight problem, there's a difference. The level of funding in these European universities are somewhat less than those provided in the United States. Also, the other problem is that most people who are going for a PhD probably would want to go for academia. So after a PhD from Europe or UK, you tend to get into a postdoc kind of cycle. But because US PhDs are somewhat longer and more robust, it's easier to transition to tenure track positions better. But yeah, having said that, there are very good universities in Europe, in Germany, and in Netherlands, I think Leiden is a very good option.
I think we have another question. Yes.
I just have one more question.
Could you remove your mask and speak a bit more loudly?
Yeah, I just have one more question that after doing my LLB program for 3 years in the UK, can I go and do my postgrad in the US and then practice law there?
I suppose you can.
No, you cannot actually. No, you cannot. To practice law in the US is a totally different track. So you can't actually do an undergrad here and practice in the US either.
I suppose you've got to
There's a
start
tough
again.
conversion program. If you really need to know that, I'm happy to sit with you, but it's not even worth it. Why would you want to go practice in the US after studying in England? Also, it's very tough to get into the JD program in the US without that US passport. In medical in the US is very difficult, and so is law.
Yes, because I don't see any point in you studying medicine in UK and then going and practicing, you know, in the US.
Law.
It's the same, almost the same thing, because you have to start from the very beginning again, from scratch, if you go off to another, isn't it? If
In the
you
US for sure.
Yes, yes, I'm talking
Because I
about
was
US,
looking at
yes.
this for a student, and it's too complicated.
So, I mean, there are no undergrad programs for law in the US.
It's not an undergrad program in the US. Law is only a postgrad program in the US.
Any other question from, yes, yes?
Good evening. I'm Charlotte Liu from La Martiniere.
Do you mind removing your mask? Yes,
Good evening. I'm Charlotte
Good evening.
Liu from La Martiniere for girls.
okay.
So my question is like after class 12, if I
Mhm.
want to pursue medicine, like I want to become a plastic surgeon.
Mhm.
So if I want to pursue medicine, so are there any good universities in US if I want to go to US or any other country, or and what are the kind of exams do I sit for, like to
For US, you have to sit for USMLE, isn't it?
Yes, but it's a postgrad program.
It's a postgrad, not an undergrad?
Yes, if you want to study medicine in the US, you can go there after you already finished your MBBS here.
so I have to do
But
MBA?
getting into medical school in the US without having the US passport, your acceptance chances are less than 0.5%. So I would suggest not going that route at all.
So that means I have to do my MBBS here.
That is actually very sensible if you can do it here.
So there's no scope of going abroad like after 12.
Well, you could go to Italy, you could go to some of the Eastern European countries, to some of the China, Philippines.
It's cheaper.
The West Indies, you could look at all of these. England is also great, but again, the acceptance rate is super low.
So if I do it somewhere in the Southeast Asian countries, and after that I can go to US?
Yes, you can if you do a USMLE for the conversion.
Okay, so the exams that I sit for after that, like after my undergrad?
Yes, you will do the USMLE.
Okay.
That's the exam.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Shevonti.
Our next question comes from Mo Shumi. She is asking for suggestions about good universities for pursuing her master's in zoology.
Zoology.
I'm afraid I'm out of my depth.
We have to look at anyone's profile to answer such specific questions.
Yes. If she can perhaps, mail us and give her profile, then perhaps we might be able to help her. Because without knowing ABC of what really she wants, what she does, it's difficult.
I don't think anything is good, bad, or worse.
no, yes.
It's just most suitable for the particular person. So what we should look for is best fit.
Okay. Our next question is from Suprema Shehnaz. She's writing, after completing bachelor's degree in history, can anybody study IR as it is more associated with political science? And my suggestions for universities for international relations.
International relations.
Yes, of course. That's obviously done. And again, you can come to Fletcher at Tufts and hear
Oh, he's the brand ambassador of Tufts.
So,
Tufts acceptance.
but-
I know,
to go right down.
absolutely.
I mean, there are other places. You can go to the Harvard Kennedy School. So for governance, which is kind of like IR. There are a bunch of places actually for IR. Like it's a very easy conversion from history to IR. That's quite a lot of people do it. A lot.
Shevonti, we have just one question here. Yes,
Hello,
yes, my dear.
I'm Suhana Shah from Tarka Girls High School.
Okay.
So I just want to pursue microbiology after 12.
Mhm.
So what are the good scopes in India as well as abroad? And should I be pursuing it in India, the BSc, or abroad?
I personally would think that's your call.
Yeah, I think you need to talk to your parents.
Oh my God, that's the toughest thing. But would anyone like to kind of answer that? We have a doctor here. He can say.
No, basically, there are many good institutes in India. You have to search for them. There are institutes in southern India. There are institutes in northern India. At the end of the day, what is the purpose of our education? We want to learn the subject and we want to practice. Then at the end of the day, if you want to get an experience from abroad and come back, definitely that's an option. But if you want to go abroad and settle abroad, it is better you leave early, isn't it? Am I correct? Or people have wrong opinion, but the doctors, we have two groups of doctors. Some people go abroad to settle there, and they usually go to US. And as you have rightly said, that they have to complete everything here and go there and start from the lowest ladder. And that's the total training period is 8 years, 7 years, 8 years. So sooner you go there, that's better. But at the end of the day, many people go there, get the experience and come back. So at the end of the day, both are correct. You can have Indian experience, you can have experience abroad, and it's much easier to come back and settle here if you have both. That's my personal experience. I don't know.
I don't think this is a yes and no answer. I think it really depends on what your circumstances are and what you've thought about doing in the future.
But it's a wonderful discipline. We need lots of good microbiologists.
We have one more question from Ishika De. She's asking, is it necessary to have a 16 years of education in order to get German university for masters?
Well, traditionally, that was a question asked for US kind of applications. I haven't quite come across for Germany. Certainly, I know people are going directly after schools in India for a degree, bachelor's degree in US. So I don't see why Germany wouldn't allow.
It's not a problem at all, actually. 16 years used to be an American thing, but even American schools are open to super bright students who have 15 years.
Any other questions, or should we call it a day? One more question? Yes, I think you have a question.
Yeah.
Okay.
What are the opportunities of research in journalism and mass communication in both in US and Europe?
Well, some of the best journalism schools are in US, Columbia being one. Research, that's a bit difficult because journalism is something that is practiced. People go out, they want to join Washington Post or New York Times, organizations like that after a degree from Columbia Journalism School. But I'm sure even these schools provide doctorate degrees, and then you can transition into teaching journalism in some of these academic institutions.
Any other question? Yes, you had one question.
I'm Amrita from CGHS. I would like to know about the scholarship opportunities in Canada for undergrad programs for accountancy, and then I would like to move on to forensic accounting for my post-graduation. So to start there, if there are any scholarship opportunities available.
Most of the scholarship opportunities in Canada come from the universities themselves, and you would have to compete for them.
Yeah, so for say U of T and
U of
British
T and
Columbia,
UBC, they do have very good scholarship opportunities, but you're going to have to compete for them. They're not easy to get.
Okay.
There is a Lester B. Pearson scholarship at Toronto, and I actually can't remember the name of the one at UBC, but they have one there as well for undergrad.
Also, the exams, TOEFL and IELTS, what is more preferred for these two?
They don't care. So I actually tell everyone just take IELTS because everyone accepts it.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much.
Yes.
What are the criteria for getting those scholarships?
Be a superstar. Be really good at what you do, basically. And academics is going to be the first thing they will look at. So ensure that your academics are up there and you have chosen one or two things to deepen your interest in, and you're able to communicate that through your, your letter of intent and through your essays and through your resume.
Okay, thank you.
I think we must call it a day now. And yes.
My question is that when you landed in US, of course you had the Cambridge experience before that. Suppose you didn't have the Cambridge experience, then what would you say that in our education system, which aspect didn't prepare you for, say, US academic system?
You mean which?
Yes,
Indian?
what is which Indian? Because most of my students say who go abroad that information wise we are very good in our universities, but writing skills, that is something which they need to develop, and they have to think more critically, and that's the feedback that I usually get. So I would like to have your answer.
Actually, I have been quite lucky that I attended St. Stephen's because at St. Stephen's we have this tutorial system where we are regularly asked to submit critical essays almost every 2 weeks. And of course, the professors there also have that kind of background. So they really know how to prepare you well for these kind of applications. But I think I am not one of those people who will criticize the Indian education system unnecessarily. We do need that information. The information, if we actually know it, does help. I can say that from experience. Many of American peers, British less so, but American peers, certainly because of the education system that they have, they do not have problem with writing skills or comprehension, but they do have some information gap. Where we are at an advantage. That is why I think so many Indians do make it to the US and UK.
Yeah, I think we need to add the writing and analytical skills. So it's not about, I think in our schools, if we go beyond the information and we are able to have classes or exercises in school where students can talk about what they have studied rather than just answer to the point, then maybe we will also develop those skills. We definitely have the information, which is amazing.
Now, on a less serious note, let's put it this way. The idea to bring scholars pursuing their higher studies abroad here, right in front of you, is to gauge, is to judge, is to see for yourselves that we don't have a superhero, what Payal just said, standing right here. He is a superhero, but it's not rocket science to make yourselves a superhero. That's what I want to say. So you have all the answers right in front of you. He is one of you. He has gone abroad, from India. He hasn't landed from the moon. So don't be apprehensive. It's nothing that you cannot do and you cannot achieve. And as regards parents' inhibition, start practicing how to convince your parents. I'll tell you how. It's like finding a bride or a groom, a match for you. You have to try real hard in order to convince your parents. If you can do that, it's almost like that. So sit with them, try to make them see things from your perspective. One of the reasons why these days children, I feel, and I speak as a mother, don't get along with their children, with their parents, is that neither of them are willing to open up. Have a heart-to-heart conversation, chat. Say what your problems are. See whether your parents are appreciative of that or not. Try giving certain examples, and those examples better be good. Absolutely. Ask your parents to come for the next session. We all are going to be here because this is addictive for us as well.
Madam?
Yes.
I've taken the opportunity, what she has just said. My son, up to class 10, he studied with some science subjects. He took admission in class 11 in science subjects. After 3 months of studying science, one day he came to kitchen and said, "Ma, I want to switch over to humanities, history." So initially We are shocked actually, but immediately we supported him. Immediately said what your heart says, or whatever the subject you like most, you go for that. We don't have any objection. Not necessarily, I want that my son will become an engineer or doctor, not necessarily. So this is a small piece of advice to the parents also. So what your children want, that you ask them. If they want to study history, okay, it's history. If they want to study zoology, okay, let him or let her study zoology. So you have to be open-minded. So don't press your children that you have to be like, what I wish, not necessarily. Go by the wish of the children. I think this is very important. That's it. Two things I just like to say, being an ex-banker, although my son said that education is quite expensive, in India, standard is quite expensive. It's not very, I think 8 to 9% of interest you have to pay. Some banks are there. And apart from that, as he also got, there are a lot of opportunities to get grants from different institutions. That aspect I think he can cover. Thank you.
I have one suggestion, ma'am.
Yes, 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 ma'am.
Actually, I've gone through all the discussions, and what I feel, one thing is there should be 3 types of discussion. One is for how to get the scholarship, because so many questions are coming out, and how to groom the children to be eligible for this particular aspect. The second is parental guidance. I come from a college which usually belongs to all these students from middle socioeconomic group. So most of the parents, they are not aware about this higher education. And one student was asking about microbiology. In my 30 years of teaching experience, what I feel that many of the guardians, they indulge their students to go for microbiology and invest so much money. And after completion of postgraduate degree, and there is as such no specific job, and they are compelled to take job in primary school. But there are lots of R&D sections where they can be employed as for pharmaceuticals companies. So the guardians are not aware of the prospect of this particular course. Similarly, one student was asking about which university will be good for zoology. So there should be subject-specific discussion, and one is for scholarship, the second one is for parental guidance, and the third one is for subjective guidance. That will be all
Your
comprehensive.
feedback. Thank you
It is
very
my
much.
suggestion.
Thank you
And
very
the last
much.
one is how to write a beautiful resume. This is a problem for many of the students.
Yes, yes. We will take it on board. That is the reason, one of the reasons why we have chosen one each month, one speaker each month, because everybody's field of interest is different and there will be loads of questions. So that is why we will take on board all these questions when we organize our forthcoming events, and I'm sure we will be able to satisfy you all. Any more questions?
There's
Yes?
So,
Yes?
so I am Indraish from Lamats.
Okay.
Boys.
Hello?
So I just want to know that does your career depend on the universities, or does it depend on the way you shape your career?
I think the way you shape your career, don't you see? Because
Your career depends on you.
Yes, what you make of
Right?
it.
So if you go somewhere, take advantage of your resources and you will do well wherever you go. You cannot expect the name of a university to help you. So you go to La Martiniere, there will be some boys who will do really well out of La Martiniere, and there will be some boys who won't, because they did not take advantage of everything that was offered to them.
Thanks.
There's one more question from Madhurima Sharkar. She has asked how to prepare oneself to study economics at any foreign university.
London School of Economics. Tathagato.
Actually, there are very good programs in the US, UC Santa Barbara. I think a lot of people from Jadavpur land in UC Santa Barbara. There are a lot of good US-based universities. I mean, some of them may not be Ivies, but Ivies are of course there. University of Minnesota would be a good option for economics. John Hopkins again. Yeah, I mean, some of these are there.
Yes, I think we have to take one final question.
Sorry, yeah.
Yes.
Actually, hi everyone, good evening. This is my daughter.
Right.
She's from La Martiniere for girls.
Okay.
And we were planning, we are still confused whether should we send her abroad for pursuing her education, because there's one fear about racism, about ragging, about bullying. Because since we live so far from our children, how can we help them now? How do they help children if they face any such thing? Because that is one thing where parents think twice before sending their children abroad. And especially when they have to, and they undergraduate, they're
Okay.
still too young to deal
Yes.
with all that pressure. So how do
Very,
these
very
institutes
good
help
question. Tathagato, perhaps you as a student, have you faced any ragging?
Not really. I mean, American universities are like bastions of woke culture. So you're very safe in American universities. There will be some occasional here and there incidents, but there is robust institutional mechanisms to tackle all kinds of these kind of racism-related issues. So I think it's very safe, and most American universities, but there are of course region specific. I think that's something to keep in mind. So if you're going to the West Coast, California, or if you're going to the East Coast, Northeast, New England, you're perfectly safe. Whereas if you're going to a university in the American South, maybe you have to be a bit more cautious.
I'm asking because of due to the experiences by other parents. It's just they shared that there was some bullying and some racism. So that is one thing which really disturbs us. And how about India? India, how is it now here? Is it under control? I mean, here also we come to know about bullying, ragging. Is it still there?
I think it depends on institution to institution, because many institutions these days have their own cells. I'll tell you a story. When I sent my son to study medicine, rather our son, I should say our son, because my husband's sitting right here, and the moment I get home, he's going to say, why did you say my son? So, when we sent our son to Ramaiah Medical College, we heard stories, horror stories about ragging, and we were told that two students actually from Kolkata had left due to that. But believe with me or not, when he landed there, he said, Mommy, the moment we introduced ourselves to the seniors as, their juniors, they started running the other way around. And we said, hang on for a minute, what's happening? And then someone came and told us that our principal had warned them, saying that even if anyone were to come and talk to you, you will be dragged and crucified. So at least for 6 months, no talking with your juniors. So that is as strict as they can get.
Thank you so much. Thank
Ma'am,
you.
I don't know about Indian institutions, but in America, there's a zero tolerance policy. If there is any racism incident that a child faces, or any sort of, even a slur in passing, they have councils that will haul the errant student up, and they will not allow your child to suffer in any way.
And 30 years back, when there was a lot of racism, when I went to study, I didn't find any racism at all.
Nothing on campus for sure.
Yes, absolutely true.
Thank you so much.
You can't control anyone outside, right? There are areas of Kolkata that you will not let your
Yes.
child walk in. So they have to be responsible when they go.
I mean, how safe are we in Kolkata?
Absolutely. So you won't go walk in the hood. You won't go walk in a crime, an area that is known for criminal activities.
I mean, always
But
tell
if
your
you're-
child that,
Absolutely.
go in a group.
Go in a group, don't go out at night. And if you're on a campus, it's perfectly safe. In fact, every campus after 11 p.m. in America will have someone who will walk you to your dorm or to the library or somewhere else if you feel that you need someone to walk with you. I mean, we used to take advantage of that because it was too cold, and someone would come pick us up in a golf cart at 2 a.m. And we would just say, I'm feeling unsafe, come pick me up.
Oh, lovely. If you want to
So-
ride in a golf cart, by all
Absolutely.
means do that.
And that was many years ago.
And most American universities have their own police force.
Yes.
So that's something. I mean,
It's as bad as that. Yes.
Most of the private institutions in India, as well as abroad, they're very conscious about maintaining their standards and reputation. So I would say, don't worry. Thank you.
Thank you very much for a very invigorating session. I never had imagined in the wildest of my dreams that it would pan out to be so successful. The most credit goes to him. A big standing ovation for him. Please, please, all of you. You've done a wonderful job. Thank you.
Thank you for having me here today.
Yes, Pyle, Janet, and all the teachers, the principals.
I've learned a lot
I'll be a better parent from today. Thank you all. Thank you. Good night. And just a moment before you go, don't walk away. We have the vote of thanks to be given by our very senior Didi, Professor Amita Chatterjee.
Not 5 minutes, I was ending 2, okay? I don't know, I also didn't expect that it will be such an engaging evening. And so on behalf of Bath Inspire Foundation and also on my behalf, I thank Tathagato for making this evening so lively with anecdotes and also information for going abroad. We are also grateful to Bengal Club for offering us its premises. And I think our president couldn't come because of some prior engagement. And our thanks are also due to him. And we enjoyed the talks by Mrs. Janet Kasper Chaudhary and also Pyle's suggestions. Thank you. And thanks to all the students who have raised their queries and make this evening successful, and the parents and teachers who have graced this occasion. We are all thankful to you. We would like to meet you once again next month when we have our next talk by another bright young scholar. Thank you and good night.